The girl who had been pursuing me for 2 years broke up with me on the third day after I agreed to date her. The day after we broke up, I saw her at a charity auction. She followed the Prince of Wall Street and made sarcastic remarks to me. Michael, you don't really think Sophia was willing to pursue you for 2 years, right? If I hadn't told her that I would allow her to be my girlfriend if she could get you, do you think she would have given you a second glance? Faced with everyone's sneers, I just casually called my biological father. I promise you that I will come home and inherit the family business. The only condition is that you drive the fake out. Almost everyone in school knew that Sophia was pursuing me. I originally thought that she was just like all the girls I had met before, and that she was just attracted by the novelty of the idea. So when she vowed that she would definitely chase me, I didn't take it to heart. But I didn't expect that Sophia would pursue him for 2 whole years. It would be a lie to say that I'm not moved, but I'm an orphan and have lived my current life by working part-time and studying late into the night. Love has always been an illusory existence in my life. I don't know if I have the ability to support the future of 2 people. So when Sophia confessed her love to me for the 100th time on my birthday, I still didn't have the courage to take a step forward. Feel sorry. The bright smile on Sophia's face gradually became stiff and forced, and my heart seemed to be tightened. She put down the rose in her hand, and the candles lit around her seemed to become much dimmer in the night wind. But even so, Sophia still forced a smile and spoke in a strong tone. It's okay, it's okay. I've been rejected by you 100 times, haven't I? I can handle it, it's okay. I will definitely succeed next time. At the end, Sophia seemed to be unable to hold on any longer and her voice became choked with sobs. She turned her head away, not wanting me to see the tears in her eyes. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand before looking at me again. The moonlight in the sky was clear, shining into her eyes, and her tears were sparkling like a pool of spring water. Michael, next time you must promise me, okay? There was a smile on Sophia's lips, but this smile looked uglier than crying. In the end, I couldn't help it and took a step forward. As long as I take the first step, everything that follows will be much easier. I walked up to Sophia, reached out and carefully wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes, and asked softly, Sophia, I'm just an orphan. I may not be able to give you anything. It will be very hard to be with me. Even so, are you willing to be with me? Sophia burst into laughter and said in a slightly reproachful tone, Am I such a vain person in your eyes? Michael, I like you, but I just like you as a person, and nothing else has to do with it. She raised her head and looked at me affectionately, with only my reflection in her eyes. Then, Sophia, let's be together. Sophia's eyes suddenly lit up, and she cheered and threw herself into my arms. Actually, not many people know that Sophia and I are together, because she still follows me around as always. The only difference is that I will take the initiative to bring her breakfast and lunch and pick her up after class. But this small change did not cause much waves. It wasn't until the 3rd day of being with Sophia that the student union held a team-building activity. As the president of the student union, I was naturally the first to go, and Sophia, as the president of the student union, would also go along. After the team building was over, everyone had dinner together. I was late because I had to report to the teacher. Standing at the door of the box, I heard Sophia's triumphant voice coming from inside. Michael? Actually, it's just like that since we're together. There's no difference. Yes, he was so happy that I liked him. He pretended to be reserved and let me pursue him for 2 years, but in the end, he still fell in love with me. Sophia has never spoken to me in such a tone. In front of me, she always speaks softly. She comes from a good family and her parents are both businessmen. Although I have heard my friends around me jokingly call her a rude and unreasonable young lady in the past, to me, these are just rumors among classmates. Now that I hear her voice, I realize that this is what the real Sophia is like. I pushed the door open and walked in. The extremely noisy voices just now became unusually quiet because of my arrival. Sophia sat in the middle of everyone. The classmates who had been polite to me in the past surrounded her, with flattering smiles on their faces that they had not yet taken away. Seeing me coming, Sophia didn't look guilty at all. She still sat lazily in the chair and looked at me with raised eyebrows. Then he said in a casual tone, Since you heard me, there's nothing I can do about it. Let's break up, Michael. It's just a joke. Don't take it too seriously. She stood up from her chair and even patted my shoulder gently as she passed by me. It was as if the friendship that had slowly developed between us over the past 2 years was nothing but a joke in Sophia's eyes. I grew up in an orphanage. The aunt who raised me said that I was probably lost when I first arrived at the orphanage. I looked only 4 years old, and the way I was dressed made me look like a child from a wealthy family. She said that my parents would be very worried when they knew I was missing and would take me away soon. So I waited and waited in the orphanage, until my friends around me left one by one, and I was still alone. Even when I was 18 and left the orphanage as an adult, I still hadn't seen my biological parents. Life in the orphanage was not easy. Children were the best at reading people's faces, so they were divided into 3 levels: upper, middle, and lower. Unfortunately, I was the last child to arrive, the youngest and the least talkative, so I was assigned to the 3rd level. This means that I will eat the least, do the most work, and receive the most severe beatings. Even at school, my classmates and teachers looked down on me because I was an orphan. In fact, until I entered university, I had never been free from the cold stares and ridicule of others. So, when Sophia left, I didn't feel sad when my former classmates who envied me looked at me with pity and ridicule. There was even a sense of relief that it had finally come. I numbly picked up my school bag and walked outside. A drizzle began to fall from the sky, and the scene of my first meeting with Sophia emerged in my mind. At that time, I was a sophomore and Sophia was a freshman. On the first day of school, she said she couldn't find the teaching building and asked me to give her a ride. I was a volunteer that day, so naturally I wouldn't refuse her. So we naturally became friends downstairs of the freshmen's dormitory. Sophia held her phone and blinked at me. "Senior, are you free tomorrow? How about I treat you to a meal to express my gratitude?" Sophia is a very beautiful girl, I don't think anyone will refute what I said. She was wearing a slim short-sleeved shirt and a pleated skirt, and her light brown hair was sparkling in the sun. I accepted her invitation without thinking. It was not until I returned to my dormitory that I realized I had fallen into a honey trap. Smart and clever, this is my first impression of Sophia. As it turned out, she was indeed very smart, otherwise she wouldn't have made it so easy for me to conclude that she liked me very much. I smiled bitterly and wiped the rain off my face. "What are you thinking about, Michael? How could any luck come to you when you have such an unlucky life?" As I was thinking this, a black nanny car stopped right in front of me. I stopped cautiously and kept a certain distance from the car. "No way? It's just a breakup, there's no need to find someone to kidnap me, right?" The back door of the car slowly opened, revealing a man in a black suit with gray hair on his temples but a determined look. When he saw me at that moment, a hint of guilt and excitement appeared on his originally stern face. "My child, I finally found you." He got out of the car and held my hand while I was confused. "Who are you?" "My child, I am your father." I followed him into the car. Perhaps blood ties can really make people sense something. The first time I saw him, I had an inexplicable sense of familiarity. My father told me that my mother died of illness not long after I was born. They both started from scratch and had a deep love for each other, so he fell into long-term pain and self-blame. He didn't take a good look at me until I was 4 years old, and he didn't even have time to give me a decent name. That day, I went out for an outing with my nanny, but we got separated due to her negligence. Although he quickly gathered all the security guards to look for me everywhere, they still couldn't find any trace of me. From that day on, he searched for me in orphanages all over the country, and finally found me 4 years later. Of course, it wasn't me. My father handed me the man's photo and I recognized his identity at a glance. He and I were in the same orphanage. When he was a child, he had a naughty and violent personality. Most of the children in the orphanage were afraid of him, including me. Not long after I arrived at the orphanage, he took away my clothes. As far as I can remember, he was taken away by a man who looked very rich when he was 8 years old. At that time, I also fantasized that it would be great if my family could take me away one day. But I never expected that he was the one who replaced my identity. My father held my hand, tears in his cloudy eyes. He gently stroked my face with his other hand, and his body was trembling. "Child, you have grown up so much. How have you been these years? Dad is sorry for you. If your mother were still alive, she would never forgive me." I put down the photo in my hand and stared blankly. "How are you doing?" During my time in the orphanage, I didn't have enough food to eat or warm clothes to wear. After graduating from junior high school, I was admitted to the best high school in the city, but I almost dropped out because I couldn't afford the tuition. Later, I worked as a waiter in a restaurant and handed out flyers on the roadside, constantly trying to make money. My hands were covered with chilblains in the winter, but when I returned to the orphanage I still had to wash clothes with cold water, and all I was left with were frozen steamed buns. But that fake guy, just because he took my clothes, had a smooth life. He was loved by his father and fed with luxury. He didn't know what suffering was. But all this should have been mine, all this love should have been mine. How did you find out? Some time ago, I was seriously ill and he went to the hospital to donate blood. The doctor found that his blood was not compatible with mine. I had doubts in my heart. Later, I asked someone to do a DNA test. Only then did I realize that I had been wrong all these years. I looked at his face, which had aged over time, and smiled. Then why did you come to see me now? My child, Dad knows that I have let you down. I don't ask you to forgive me. I only ask that you come home. After all, this is your home. Everything I have will be yours when you get home. I am not in good health. The doctor said I don't have many years left. You are the only one who can inherit this huge fortune. His tone was full of truth, but my mind was extremely confused. Let me think about it. Okay, here's my business card. When you figure it out, call me. There's also an invitation. There's a charity dinner tomorrow. Dad wants you to go. At least, you need to understand this world before making a choice. He placed a black and gold invitation in my hand and sent me to the school gate. I returned to the dormitory in a daze and fell asleep immediately. At the end of the day, first my girlfriend, who I thought I had found love, broke up with me, and then my biological father came to my door. I was really exhausted. He shook my shoulder and handed the phone to me. Michael, wake up. Look at this. On the phone screen was a post on the school's confession wall, which clearly showed a video of Sophia breaking up with me last night. There are countless comments below. People who hate me say that they have always disliked my self-righteous attitude, and people who hate Sophia say that she is a real scumbag who plays with other people's feelings. But the most eye-catching one is Sophia's own reply. Of course I haven't. Are you kidding me? Do you really think I would like an orphan? Don't be ridiculous. His monthly living expenses are not even enough for me to have a meal. My roommate probably noticed that my face was getting worse, so he carefully took back the phone and asked, Michael, are you okay? Don't worry. We are all on your side. It's obvious that Sophia is not a good person. It's a pity that you were so worried that she would be sad because of your rejection. That's right, Michael, don't think too much. I listened to their advice, but I still felt that the depression in my heart was difficult to dispel. At this moment, there was only one question in my mind, which was why Sophia came to me since she and I didn't know each other before. Why, it has to be me. Where is Sophia now? From her circle of friends, it seems like she said there's a charity dinner tonight. Hey! Where are you going, Michael? Before my roommate could finish speaking, I had already picked up the ticket on the table and went out. There were still a few hours before the charity dinner started, and I needed to get a suit before then. After much deliberation, I called the number on the business card. After hearing the purpose of my visit, the man just asked me to wait at the school gate. Not long after, the black nanny car that I saw last night stopped at my door again. The man with the gold glasses gave me a friendly smile. Michael, I'm President Michael's assistant. I'm here to take you to buy a suit that fits you. I was not used to his address, but I nodded politely and got in the car. The nanny car sped all the way to the custom suit shop in the city center. I quickly picked out a pure black suit, and the next step was to measure my size. With the financial support of Michael's family, the clothes that would have taken several days to make were delivered to me in just a few hours. Along with the suit, there is also a black card. This is what President Michael asked me to give you. If you see anything you like tonight, just swipe your card. After hesitating for a moment, I finally accepted the black card. Thank him for me. The assistant seemed to have accomplished something remarkable and breathed a sigh of relief. Michael, get in the car. I'll take you to the dinner. Good. Along the way, he talked to me a lot, and there was no lack of expression of the guilt and pain my father felt after he found out that the child next to him was not his biological child. I seldom had contact with them after I left the orphanage, so I can imagine that it must have taken a lot of effort for him to find me in such a short time. I know it wasn't his intention to lose me, but for a moment, I couldn't help feeling a little aggrieved. Originally, I should have grown up in a family full of love. Even though my mother is gone, at least I still have my father. Instead of being the orphan they had scolded for so many years. The nanny car slowly stopped in front of the banquet hall entrance. There were many cars outside, most of which were luxury cars that I had only seen in TV dramas. My heart suddenly started beating faster and even my body tensed up. This is a situation I have never been in before. What should I do if I make a fool of myself in it? The assistant next to me noticed my shyness and just said something with a smile. Michael, the Michael family and President Michael will always support you. yes, I am no longer the fatherless and motherless orphan. I have a father. He is the president of Michael Family Group and is worth tens of billions. I opened the car door, walked towards the entrance of the banquet hall, and handed over my invitation. After the security guard at the door took a look at my invitation letter, his eyes immediately widened, then he bent down with a flattering smile on his face. Come in. He opened the heavy golden door, and I walked into that luxurious and magnificent world. The piano accompaniment echoed in the banquet hall. Everyone was dressed in formal attire, standing on the almost reflective floor, chatting with each other. They exuded the nobility of a life of luxury, and even the crystal chandelier on the ceiling seemed to be sparkling. My arrival did not attract much attention, because their eyes were all on the boy sitting in the middle of the banquet hall. The boy was wearing a floral shirt inside and his suit outside was casually open. His hair was waxed and he had 3 piercings in his left ear. It looks like a synonym for bohemianism. And the person holding his arm was Sophia. Sophia is really lucky. She was born in a poor family, but she was able to catch Michael's eye. That boy is the one who stole my identity. I hid in the crowd and listened to their whispers about the so-called Michael. He is the only apparent heir to the Michael family group. He has been spoiled by my father since he was a child. After he was lost at the age of 4 and found at the age of 8, he became even more doted on. Even if he wanted the stars in the sky, he would try every means to get them. This also led to his lack of knowledge and skills. Apart from picking up girls and falling in love, he spent his days racing cars and drinking. He tried almost everything that could be played, and he changed girlfriends faster than I changed clothes. But even so, under his reputation as the Prince of Wall Street, girls who want to date him still flock to him in droves. When they mentioned that David had just stopped a plane for a woman who was going abroad to study, I finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. It was this sneering laugh that made Sophia, who was leaning against David, notice me. Her originally happy smile completely disappeared at this moment, and her face became gloomy. Michael? Why are you here? How did you get in? After Sophia spoke, the crowd that had just been whispering around David immediately turned their eyes to me. Under everyone's gaze, I had no way to continue hiding myself, so I had to walk out of the crowd. David's eyes moved back and forth across my face, and for a moment I even thought he had recognized me. Until I saw the contempt and indifference in his eyes. Sophia, who is this? David was obviously not happy that I had taken away the gaze that had just rested on him, and the tone of his voice was not very good. When Sophia heard his voice, she instantly put away the contempt for me on her face, and once again moved closer to David's arms, like a little bird. You forgot Ioun, the boy you asked me to pursue 2 years ago. David, the boy she chased after. I couldn't believe what I heard and was confused for a moment. Sophia, what did you say? Did David ask you to chase me? I took a step forward and questioned Sophia. But she just glanced at me nonchalantly, as if saying any more words to me would be a waste of life. David, on the other hand, looked as if he had suddenly realized something. I remember now, it's the boy I pointed at the gate of your school that day, right? I heard that you and Sophia were together a few days ago, and then you got dumped. You don't really think Sophia likes you, do you? She just wanted to take away the opportunity to date me. What's your name? Sophia, who was standing by, kindly reminded, Michael. Oh yes, Michael. David stood up from his chair and walked towards me, then stopped a few steps away from me. You don't think that being the same as me means you have the same identity as me, do you? You are just a commoner. Being pursued by Sophia for 2 years is the peak of your life. Remember to savor every day in the future. David laughed, put his arm around Sophia's waist, and walked past me. I could hear other people's ridicule constantly in my ears. What? I thought he was Michael's illegitimate child, but he's just a commoner. Who said it wasn't him? I don't know how he got in. Did he crawl through a dog hole? It's so funny. I wanted to see him and Michael fighting each other, but now it's a one-sided fight. Come on, that's Michael, who dares to fight with him? David was obviously enjoying such a time of being the center of attention, and the smile on his face never faded. I originally thought that if he found out about my arrival, as he had been the only son of the Michael family for so many years, and had been David, my father's son for so many years, he would not be able to accept it. But now it seems that he is not worthy of this position at all. David. I called him. Do you still remember David's identity and how it came about? David stopped and looked back at me with a gloomy expression. I originally thought that he had remembered his original identity and had such a big reaction to my words because he felt guilty, but I didn't expect that he just reacted because I called him by his name. Who gave you the guts to call me by my name? This time he didn't even care about Sophia and pulled his arm out directly, leaving Sophia to almost fall to the side in her high heels. David strode up to me and grabbed me by the collar. There was no trace of the nobleness of a pampered life on his face. He looked just like a gangster. I couldn't help but frown and asked, "Why did your father give you this name and not allow people to call you that? Will people call your soul back after you die?" Someone beside me chuckled. David probably felt that he was being insulted. He sneered, loosened my collar, and shouted, "Where's the security? Call out your person in charge. I want to see who let this untouchable in here." Untouchables? This is the first time I heard such a title other than in costume dramas. I was casually adjusting my collar when a man in uniform immediately walked through the crowd and came to David. "Michael, are you looking for me?" Sophia had come back to David's side. She seemed to have sprained her ankle and her face was pale with pain, but she still forced herself to raise her chin and acted as if she was insolent. "Get this guy out of here." "Okay, Michael." The person in charge didn't ask the reason, but just waved his hand, and two burly men came behind me. "Why? Just because I called your name?" The person in charge winked at me and said in a low voice, "Stop talking. If you offend Michael, no one can save you." I asked back, "Even President Michael can't help?" The person in charge looked at me as if I were a fool. I didn't deliberately lower my voice, and everyone present could hear what I said clearly. David laughed out loud, his eyes full of arrogance. "President Michael? Who do you think you are? Why would my dad help you but not me?" "Because I am his son." David's mocking voice only paused for a few seconds, and then it was followed by even louder laughter. He even had tears in his eyes from laughing. "Michael, have you become stupid from studying so much? Do you really think you and I are brothers?" I shook my head and said calmly, "Not a brother, because you are not my father's son at all." This sentence seemed to have touched a sore spot in his heart, and David's expression suddenly changed. "I don't want to waste any more time talking to a psychopath like you. Throw him out." With David's order, the two security guards behind me were about to grab my arms and take me away from the banquet hall. I quickly escaped from their control, took out my cell phone and dialed the number. "Hanjo, do you have something to ask me?" The voice on the other end of the phone sounded humble and flattering. I said in a deep voice, "I am willing to go home and inherit the family property. My only request is that I want David, the fake one, to get out." His voice paused only for a moment. "Okay, I'll listen to you." After hanging up the phone, David, who was so energetic just now, had turned pale. Others might not be able to hear my father's voice, but David must be very clear. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Sophia panicked for a moment and reached out to tug at his sleeve. "Ayun, is the person on the other end of the phone really President Michael?" David was getting annoyed at the moment, so he pushed her away and yelled with a red face, "Are you fucking sick? Just because you made a few phone calls and said a few words, you're really my dad? Use your brain and think about it. How could an ordinary male college student like him have my dad's phone number?" With David's assurance, Sophia seemed to be relieved. She no longer cared about the injury she had caused and turned back into the domineering young lady she used to be. The banquet hall, which had been almost still just now, became lively again after David finished speaking. "I'm so scared." I was saying, how could President Michael allow his own son to be left alone? I was almost fooled by this guy. He is so brave that he even dares to tell such a lie. Isn't it? I'm afraid he's crazy about being rich. I've seen a lot of people like him. I ignored their ridicule and just stared at David quietly. He was obviously starting to panic, because others might not know, but he himself knew very well whether he was my father's biological child. Seeing me looking at him, David gritted his teeth and said to the security guard standing still, "What the hell are you guys standing there for? Didn't I tell you to throw him out?" The two security guards looked at each other and walked towards me again. This time I didn't dodge. "Are you sure?" Their steps hesitated. David behind him seemed to finally explode. He picked up the wine glass beside him and threw it at a security guard. "You don't even listen to me? Believe it or not, I will destroy your family." The wine glass hit the back of the security guard's head, and blood flowed down his forehead. He looked extremely painful, but he still didn't dare to disobey David's orders. I sighed in my heart and was about to say that I could walk out by myself, but the door of the venue was suddenly opened. The person who appeared at the door was my father's assistant. He walked towards me, looked me up and down to make sure I was not injured, then he breathed a sigh of relief and scolded the security guard in front of me, what are you doing? Is Michael someone you can touch casually? The assistant was always by my father's side and had appeared on many TV shows over the years, so everyone present had an impression of him. Seeing him standing beside me and speaking for me, those who had originally believed in David began to doubt themselves and looked back and forth between David and me. David's lips trembled, but he still refused to admit that he was a fake. Uncle Zhao, why are you here? My dad doesn't need to intervene in such a small matter. I can handle it myself. However, the assistant was not impressed by David's advances. He just stared at David with his emotionless cold eyes, and then said, David, President Michael already knows the truth of everything. 15 years ago, you took Michael's clothes and made President Michael mistakenly think that you were a lost child, thus missing the chance to meet Michael. In the past 15 years, you have been bullying others with the title of the young master of the Michael family. The Michael family has done its best for you. Now that the real young master is back, it's time for you to leave the Michael family and live your real life. The assistant's words made everyone present gasp, especially Sophia. Her face was as white as paper, and she had to hold on to a chair beside her to prevent herself from falling down due to weak legs. But David seemed unwilling to face the facts. He laughed awkwardly for a few times, then suddenly pointed at me and shouted, I know. You must have conspired with me. Uncle Zhao, you have been with my father for so many years. I always thought you were loyal. I didn't expect that you would join forces with outsiders to annex my family's property. You are all lying. I am the child of the Michael family. The only heir of the Michael family. David looked like a madman. The assistant seemed to be afraid that he would hurt me, so he quickly protected me and took a few steps back. They can't prove it, so what about me? It's father coming. The sudden arrival of my father made everyone dare not breathe. I looked at him and whispered, Dad. The man, who had a stern face and showed no emotion just now, immediately had tears in his eyes because of my voice. Good boy, he murmured and patted my shoulder. David shouted from the side, Dad, what are you doing? I am your son. His father put away the kindness on his face and looked at him with cold eyes. Don't act, David. I've done a DNA test with you, and the result shows that you and I have no blood relationship at all. Hanzhou is my child, and because of you, my son and I missed a full 15 years. Since everyone is here today, I would like to announce that from now on, David and I have no relationship with Michael's family. As soon as his father said this, David seemed to lose all his strength and fell to the ground. This is probably what he looks like after falling from the clouds. When the security guard went up to pull him, he was still limp on the ground and unwilling to leave. He kept calling Dad and reached out to grab my father's trouser leg. Dad, you can't do this to me. I've been with you for 15 years. Dad. Even if we are not related by blood, but in the past 15 years, haven't you shown any mercy? Dad. David's screams were eventually drowned out by the slamming door. My father looked at me again, his eyes full of appreciation and joy. Let me introduce you to you again. This is my son, Michael. Although he has been wandering around for so many years, he still lives a great life through his own efforts. Hanzhou, Dad is proud of you. There was a smile on his face, and I could tell every word he said was true. He loved me very much, or rather, it was because he loved my mother very much. The love for me now is just a continuation of my mother's love, and also because my excellence is enough to bring commercial value to Michael's family. This charity dinner started with an absurd comedy between David and I, and people kept coming up to me with smiles on their faces to congratulate me. There was no way to tell what their expressions were just now. When one stands on a high place, all one sees are smiles. I didn't turn a straight face and stop socializing with them because of the farce just now. After all, maybe one day in the future I will need their help. It wasn't until the charity dinner was almost over that I had time to relax and laze around. It was at this time that Sophia found me again. She seemed to have forgotten everything that had happened between us. She still had a smile on her face and a red wine glass in her hand. She looked particularly dignified. Hanzhou, Miss Sophia, you got the wrong person, didn't you? Your boyfriend just got thrown out, don't you want to go meet him? I interrupted Sophia. Just because I can forgive the people who just watched the show doesn't mean I will forgive Sophia. Her face turned blue and purple, and the hand holding the red wine glass gradually became stronger. But facing the me of today, Sophia didn't have the strength and courage to turn around and leave. She could only accept my sarcasm. Hanzhou, I know I was wrong before, can you give me another chance? Those things were all David asked me to do. You know his previous identity. If I refuse him, I will be played badly. Hanjo, that's not what I meant. Sophia said this and tried to grab my clothes, but I took a step back and she fell to the ground because she didn't stand firmly. She put down the rose in her hand, and the candles lit around her seemed to become much dimmer in the night wind. Do it. I poured the red wine in my hand onto her head. Sophia, you're nothing special. Tail. I don't know how the news of the charity dinner got out, and now everyone in the school knows that I am the heir to Michael's family group. Of course, the happiest people were my roommates, who clamored that their future jobs were secure. In my senior year, I officially entered the company for internship. In order to make up for the fatherly love he had given me for more than 10 years, my father was very obedient to me, which made me laugh and cry every time. I heard that David didn't have a good life after leaving Michael's family. He didn't have a high level of education, and because he had been pampered for so many years, he couldn't stand hardship at all. It didn't take long for him to spend all his money, and finally he had to go to work to support himself. But he either disliked the low salary or the tiring work, and would quit after less than a month in a place. Until the end, I did nothing. As for Sophia, her father saw that Sophia had offended me so much that he immediately began to train his second daughter. A company business crisis sent Sophia to the bed of a boss in his 40s. But these had little to do with me anymore, because at that time I had officially inherited the company and became President Michael. And my past experiences will only make me cherish everything I have now even more.